Hello, happy Tuesday. I know, Tuesday, right? Not our usual. Started thinking last night late about my schedule for this week, and it's busy. So I thought, okay, this morning, I'm going to do a quick one this morning live, and it's International Coffee Day. Happy International Coffee Day. What are you guys drinking? Hey, Sarah. So this morning, I opened last night Deadly Grounds, which is very apropos for Kari to talk about, right? So I did the Italian roast this morning, and it's quite tasty. They're out of Connecticut. It's really fun. I saw them at Hearstfest when I was there, and didn't try the coffee then. And so here we are a little while later and drinking some Deadly Grounds. Hey, Nancy in Scotland. All right, guys. So I have a challenge for you. Need some ideas. You guys are always really good about this. If Kari was to make a flavor of coffee, not coffee, ice cream, two of my favorites, coffee and ice cream, a flavor of ice cream that was a funeral Halloween related, what would that be? So this was a conversation my husband and I had last night. We were trying to come up with crazy ice cream flavors that would be legit, that would taste good, but also be kind of Halloween flavored for Kari to make. So challenge, what would you think would be a fun Halloween themed funeral director making ice cream flavor? Give me your ideas. All right, so we've got a couple questions. So June had asked me, while I was driving my ambulance, I merged on the highway and realized that I accidentally merged into a procession. I switched lanes as soon as I had the chance. I was wondering if I were going with lights and sirens would have been the proper way to treat a procession. So in Michigan, at least, emergency vehicles that are en route, so anyone with sirens or lights going, have the priority. So a funeral procession must yield to them. If an ambulance is just driving along like another vehicle, then they need to abide by the same law as every other car. And then the funeral procession has the right of way, essentially. You know, on a highway, it's not so much right of way, but you can't get in the middle of that procession remaining intact. So if she was just driving regular onto the highway and merged accidentally into a procession, you know, unfortunately, getting onto the highway, it's not like you can just stop your car. Well, you can just stop your car and wait for the whole procession and then get over. It does create a little bit of a different situation. As long as you get out of it as quick as you can and then continue on your way and let the procession remain intact, that's the best thing to do. Oh, thank you, Chris Kilborn, for sharing that. Coffee flavor with a hint of pumpkin spice. That would be good for the ice cream I'm guessing you're talking about. Haunted honeycomb ice cream, like honey flavored. Yes, Jamie, I have taken care of a murder victim. I've talked recently, actually, a few times because someone had asked me some of the hardest, and I think murder is the hardest because you're looking and caring for somebody who didn't want to be there. They didn't choose that, and the end of their life was probably scary and maybe painful and fearful and prayerful. And, you know, you can only imagine the worst of how the end might have been. And just had a child recently that had been killed and, you know, a little helpless, can't fight for themselves against somebody else person. Is even worse. So it's just, it kind of haunts me for days, and not much does with this, but though people who are murdered really do stick with me and very much bother me for days. It's law that you got to pull over for a funeral in Michigan. No, it's not. It's courtesy to pull over. You cannot interfere with a procession though. At an intersection, the procession always has the right of way. Unless it's so like if I approach a road to turn in onto another road in an intersection, every other car needs to stop for me leading the procession. If we're at a red light, I cannot go through as the lead car a red light. If I make through a yellow light before it turns red, then everybody can follow through behind me. But I cannot break the law of a red light to bring my procession through. Donna, great question. You could call a local funeral home, but you could also look online. There are different websites. Like there's a Green Burial Council. I can't think of the name of the website right now off the top of my head. Oh, sure. Joelle has a question as well. Grave Woman is with us this morning. She's so amazing. Yeah, go ahead and post it, Joelle. So, sorry, I'm reading. So with a green burial, definitely Google honestly is the best place. And also just pay attention to the news. There are cemeteries that are converting spaces into green burial spaces, whether it's going to be in a year or two, maybe, but you could always call your cemetery that you want to be buried in and ask about doing a green burial and what that means to you. The term green burial used to be pretty definitive what it meant. It's now become a pretty loose term in terms of a little more natural way of doing a burial, but it's not always the right into the earth, just a shroud, no headstone type thing. It may look a little different depending on the area you're in. So excited to finally make a live chat. Hey, Melissa. Thank you so much for sharing the wealth of your knowledge. Oh my goodness, you're so welcome. So the Grave Woman is asking, would you allow a family to watch and participate while you are embalming? You're so awesome. So it is up to, there are state laws that govern who can be in the prep room and in what capacities. So some are a lot more strict when it even comes to cosmetizing and hairdressing and everything, anybody in contact with the body. So it depends on your state laws as well. And some funeral homes really strictly abide by the fact that if you do not have a license, either as an apprentice or as a licensee, then you're not allowed in during embalming. However, if a family wants to watch, I would ask them the question, why? What are you hoping to gain? If they just want to participate in some of the activity of preparation, then I would definitely find them tasks that are not as much part of the mechanical steps that we're making in terms of aspirating and injecting and stuff. But if they want to be there while we bathe and while we maybe just close eyes and position and dress and casket, it's a conversation of finding out more than just, I want to be there during embalming. There are always different reasons people want to be there. And if they want to be there for the whole thing, I would talk them through the whole process verbally first. I would make them sign a lot of papers and then proceed. And along the way, I would stop and ask, okay, do you want to step out at this point? Are you okay with this? This is what's coming next. So it would be a lot of discussion. I think where a director may go wrong is just being annoyed that a family wants to participate and view and just says, all right, go ahead and sign this, let's go, and isn't as gentle and communicative about it. And so the person is then overwhelmed by the situation because they had no idea what was coming and it's not exactly what they really wanted to see. And then they're traumatized. And I think that is when we get into trouble, is by doing some of those kind of things. Which is cheaper, burial or cremation? Well, it depends what type of services you want. So burial and cremation are disposition methods. You can have a whole slew of activity before the disposition. So they can be the exact same price. They can be drastically different. It depends on what type of services are coming beforehand. Is there a better time of year to pre-plan or prepay? No, there's really not. It's always the same. Typically, I think kind of like a lot of businesses, they increase prices within a business in a lot of places, beginning of the year or mid-year, like July, which is is it fiscal year? I don't know what that's called. That part of the business, I really am out. But typically, your beginning or your mid-year is about when you're going to see trends in maybe price increases. So if you want to get in maybe before a price increase, that might be the time, is maybe end of the year or spring. Is it legal to bury someone with their pet's ashes? It depends. So some states don't allow this. They don't allow commingling of humans and animals in the same cemetery, even if it's cremated remains. So laws were put in place a long time ago that pets couldn't be buried maybe in a human cemetery. And so they've carried that through to cremated remains being that way as well. So it doesn't specify, and so they've had to stick with those rules. I feel like a lot of people go into the business, grow up around it, and so are 100% knowing what to expect and comfortable. What advice would you give someone who did not grow up around the business, the deceased someone enter? So actually, it is the norm right now that you are a first generation person going to school and going into the business. Generations are not taking over businesses. They are more typically now, there is no succession plan, and that you're hiring somebody new that you've never met to come in that you are one day going to turn over your business to, and they are a first generation funeral director. So it is actually the norm that it is not generational anymore. It's definitely changed over the years as to how it is. Just because people don't want to go into family businesses, or there is no children, or it wasn't at the right time to turn over and they couldn't bring on 2 new people in one small business, or the business sold to another company. So a lot of different reasons, but definitely it is completely normal now that it is a first generation person going to school. I've heard of deceased being stuffed. Is that true? So Sarah, I think you're talking about, there was a case, the gentleman that was buried in he died in the bleachers or the rolled up exercise mat or whatever. I'm trying to think of his name. I read all the stuff about it about a year ago. Someone had asked me my opinion on the whole thing. So sometimes funeral directors will use newspaper rather than cotton if they are doing like packing of orifices or areas. It's not okay. You're not supposed to use garbage with the body, and it depends how you view it, I guess. Newspaper can just be another medium of material that you can use that's readily available to fill that area. Some people use towels or paper towel or cotton, things like that. So on that instance, that funeral director used newspaper, and it's probably how he had learned from whoever taught him, and it's just been the norm at that funeral home for forever. Just like sometimes embalmers will use empty cavity or empty fluid bottles because they're nice, 3-inch square for positioning blocks under arms, or just to get a little bit of a different positioning while you're embalming or while the person is then drying out before they're dressed. Some people see that as using garbage with the body. So it's kind of that fine line, how you define things, if you're being resourceful or if you're doing something naughty. How far do you go with prep if someone's been badly damaged in an accident that there cannot be a viewing? Is a family allowed to see their loved one? So Jamie, I wish that I could share pictures of before and afters that funeral director and embalmers have done advanced restorations, because crap yourself, literally. It is crazy how you can take a head that's been crushed, literally just obliterated, and rebuilt into that person. The saying is, they don't need to look perfect. They need to be perfectly recognizable or perfectly presentable. The family just needs a recognition of who that person is. They don't need a complete restoration back to exactly how they were, because they're dead. They're never going to be exactly how they were. And they've been in a traumatic accident, so they're definitely not going to be exactly how they were. But accidents where someone else may look at the body and say they definitely don't need to be viewed, we on the other side can do wonders. We can do, I say magic, because it's amazing. So you can open the skull, resect the whole face off, rebuild with plaster of Paris and wire ties and all this stuff, the whole skeletal structure underneath, and then lay the skin back over and present to the family a recognition of who that person is. So with advanced decomposition, with horrible accidents, with all these situations, at least there can be a try. At least there can be an attempt, because you can do a lot more than most people believe can be done. And if not, if the face is destroyed for some reason, you can still show a hand. You can show a foot. You can show an arm that has a tattoo that's recognizable. People need a concrete moment with part of the person to really grasp that that person is who is dead. It's important. It helps our mental catch up with everything that people are telling us. Very important. Could someone be stuffed like taxidermy? I guess they could. I don't know the taxidermy. I mean, it's essentially skinning somebody and laying it over a styrofoam human form is what taxidermy is. So you could. Oh, you're in Iceland. You know, I was chatting with a woman at a bar in an airport in, I think it was Philadelphia or something. No, it was in Pittsburgh when I was leaving Pittsburgh. And she was headed to Iceland, and that was their place to go on the weekends, because it was a pretty short flight. It was only like 3 hours or something silly. And they would just go for a long weekend and go fly in and go bar hopping for a couple of days and then fly home. And that was their quick getaway, have fun weekend, was to Iceland. Who'd have thought? By law, do you have to be embalmed? No, never by law do you have to be embalmed. Not a law, no. There are areas that it may play a factor. There are some states that are looking at or instituting laws that within so many hours of death, you need to be within a certain temperature refrigeration, you need to be embalmed, you need to be buried, or you need to be cremated. So it's an option of one of the items that you have to be within a certain time period. But there's not a law that says you definitively have to be embalmed for X reason. It's one of the options during a time frame typically that you need to be. Funeral homes have their own rules on whether they require embalming for a public viewing or after a certain period of time or whatever it may be. So it is a funeral home policy. They're not doing it just to gouge you and to get money out of you. They're doing it to maintain a level of respectable presentation on their part, because the public does not know that you chose to have a public viewing 5 days after grandma died, and that grandma's going to be discolored and possibly start purging during the visitation or smell. And so because it reflects on the funeral home, they say a lot of the times that we require this to maintain a level of presentation that we are controlling, that we are part of, that we are ensuring that the public is seeing the person at the best that we can present. If that makes sense. So, sure, someone could confirm, I'm sure, that Tupac is dead. But does the funeral director know for sure who Tupac was? Or was it just somebody else they cared for that week? You got to think about that. You know, Elvis in the end, I probably wouldn't have recognized him if he came through the prep room, you know, because somebody who's in their dead form looks different than alive. And in the end, he looked drastically different than most of how everybody knew him alive. So I might not have even recognized that it was Elvis when he came through the prep room. I am near Kalamazoo, Kayla, by Kalamazoo, Grand Rapids area. So I work in Kalamazoo a few days a week for a funeral home there. What's the hardest class you took in college? Great question. So accounting, probably, or chemistry. My brain is not geared towards numbers. I don't think that way. I can't look at numbers and it just all makes sense. And so accounting, honestly, the only thing I remember is like first in, first out, FIFO, or last in, first out, or first in, last out, or whatever it is. It's not my forte. So my husband is all business minded all the time. He can run numbers like nobody's business. So we are like a yin yang when it comes to any business things. I know the people side, and I know the chemistry between working with people and reading them, and he knows the numbers and all of that. So we do well that way. If he would just listen to me when I tell him about people, because he doesn't always believe me. Let's see. Oh, hey, T. Lee. How does licensing work if you're licensed in one state and want to move to another? So you would reciprocate your license, and every state has a different rule. So some states you have to do your apprenticeship again. Typically, though, you just need to make sure that your prerequisites line up with theirs and take their state board. And then you will get a new license in their state. So every state is different, though. You have to look into what their rules are. Do you feel families act differently at funerals depending if the deceased was by a murder, suicide, sudden, or expected death? I think it always plays into, because it may be unexpected because it's a murder or a suicide. Some families are searching for answers in those situations, and they're not always present and in the moment. They may be in more of a state of shock during some of those situations as well. Some are embarrassed, depending what the situation may be, or trying to hide. And everybody that walks in is trying to get information out of them, because people are nosy by nature. And so they're asking questions like, what happened? What happened? How did this happen? Why did this happen? Who did this? Why did they do it? Not questions for the family during that time. So don't ask those questions. It's rude, and it's pushy, and it's intrusive, and it's not something the family needs to be talking about. Ask, can you tell me about their favorite sport in high school? What did they do when they were young? Or I saw a picture of them playing checkers. Was that something they really liked to do? Stop talking about the person's death, because the family is uncomfortable enough and hurting enough. Talk about their life and help them to remember. That's my do it thing for the morning. Have you encountered any spirits? Yes. So I have a video on that. Go check it out. Kari and her paranormal experience. Have you ever taken care of a famous person? Not famous per se. I took care of a high school student that died playing basketball right after a basketball game. And the situation went international very quickly in the news. Still don't understand quite why that one moment and that one situation blew up the way it did. But the next morning, it was all over international news. It was all over SportsCenter by the end. I was on a SportsCenter clip. I talked to a reporter from Sports Illustrated. Like, it just blew up, and I still don't know why, but it was that like a Lifetime movie thing, you know, the cute, super sweet basketball all-star die suddenly after the winning game, and you know, he's got this sweet girlfriend and this wonderful family and a town and a community that loved him, and it just was a story that resonated and everybody wanted to be part of. And I think that's why maybe it caught on, but I'm still honored I was ever part of all of that. It was really amazing. So taking care of family members, how do you handle it? Great question. And I've done videos on this. I would regret not taking care of somebody I loved because I would always wonder if I could have done it better. That's how much of a control freak I am. But that's also just, you know, God gave me a specific talent, or God, you know, instilled in me something to do. If you were a plumber, would you call in Roto-Rooter to come take care of your pipes? Probably not. You're going to try and do it yourself because that's your house. That's your thing. And so this is my thing. And it's also special time I get to spend with my loved ones that no one else gets to, is I get to bathe them. I get to prepare them. I get to dress them. I get to make them, you know, look just so. So to me, that is a selfish little moment in time that I get to steal for myself that no one else gets to. It's maybe coping. It's maybe whatever you want to call it. Maybe keeps me mentally in the game. But then later, I think I crash harder. But that's why I do it. Oh, Stephanie, a lot of vocabulary because you're learning how to pass a board, and then you can forget a lot of it. Truly. You're starting tomorrow, Sadie. My first day. I was 16 years old my first day of going to the funeral home. Honestly, it's been so long ago that it's hard to remember my first day. I think just like any new job, the first day, you're just trying to stay out of everybody's way and you're trying to take in as much as you can. And you're around new people who aren't always communicating with you the best. And that's one of the biggest things, I think, is because when a funeral director comes in, they have to attack all the situations that kind of happen from overnight. And they may be going in 100 different directions and they can't always stop and communicate to you everything that's going on. And so you're just trying to pick up pieces and log any information you're seeing. I recommend on your first day, just bring a little notepad and jot down questions because you may not be able to ask them in the moment, but at the end of the day, when it's slowing down, you can go back and readdress and ask maybe why those things happened or, you know, what's going on. Always ask if there's resource sheets or if there's somewhere on the computer you can look up information. That way, you don't have to ask maybe some of the questions that you have, but you can just go find the information on your own. If you're working as like an apprentice, don't just see the funeral director as who you need to watch. You need to be best friends with the other staff, all the part-timers, all of the office staff, all of the garage staff, everybody else, because they are who you're especially learning from. You need to know how a business functions in order to do your job within the business. Learn it all, take it all in, go spend time with all these other people and places within the business, because that's where you really are going to build your foundation of knowing about your job. All right, let's see what time we got. Maybe two more. It's hot here, Kayla. It's like today is a good Indian summer day. It's humid and warm and probably the last shorts and t-shirt day. So can you get a job in this industry without an education? So like no high school diploma or anything, Wendy? You're going to need at least a high school diploma and sure to get to work in the business. You know, you may be able to, like in high school, do some things around the funeral home, but not saying that an education is the only way you're educated, but spelling and punctuation, things like that within the office are especially important. I hired somebody once and they couldn't spell Michigan. So she did not last long, unfortunately, but those things matter. proofreading matters. Accuracy matters. Oh my goodness, you guys have so many good questions. Tuesday is like the morning of the most excellent questions. You guys are amazing. Yeah, we have, Cindy, we have a little bit of a dark sense of humor being in the funeral business. You know, I joke with families in a little bit of a way. I feel them out, and I feel like most of the time I connect with them on the level they're at. They need a little levity. Families are not always just serious. It's not always this sad, horrible moment. Some of them are getting through these steps because it's the point that they need to get through. They're burying 90-year-old mom, and it's just where they're at, and they know they need to get there. But they also are enjoying and remembering her life. And so you need to walk along with them where they're at in their path. And sometimes that means laughing. Sometimes that means jokes. Sometimes that means sharing something with them. You walk along with them. And then on the backside, yeah, we do make some crazy jokes, not at family's expenses, but just things that are funny. So last question, I'm going to sign off. Oh, Michelle, that's big. My grandma died a month ago from leukemia. I was wondering if you think she is okay. I have no idea. I wish I knew. I wish being a funeral director, I knew anything about what happens after the death, but it doesn't. So I have a visitor. Can you say hi? So, yeah, I wish I could give any consolation to you guys, but I can't. I am as terrified of death as anybody else, I think. Thanks, Pat. So I have to go be a mom now. We've got our 30 minutes in. Stop giving me. That's what she likes to do. So I get to go be a mom now. Thank you guys. Enjoy your coffee. Send me any ice cream ideas. And I will talk to you guys soon. Bye.
Came. I came